Okay, hopefully I don't. Hopefully I've done this right for the first time ever. I won't have an echo. I'll sound normal. You can even hear me. Well, as normal as I ever sound. Although I'm using that one headphone that I think caused a little ringing last time, and I think I can hear it. Oh, I wonder if you guys can hear it. I may have to switch over to my old Logitech. Can you folks hear me? Is it causing any kind of a feedback? I thought maybe I heard a little ringing before. I scared two people away with that. Holy cats. Hey, I didn't mean to spook you. Oh, good. We got one back. Okay. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully I'm not just talking to myself in the studio. I need a name for a bartender. I was going to go with Sully, and I'm not sure I like it. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Somebody name this bartender. Nicholas, I knew I could count on you. Hey, Nicholas, name the bartender. I need a name for this bartender. You want to give him a name? Oh, and you can also tell me if I sound normal or if there's a ringing in the background when I speak. I kind of think it might be the latter, and I'll have to switch over to my old headset. Oh, good. Uh, Male or female bartender? That's a good question. It's a good question. Let's make it a male bartender. The image that I've got in my head is kind of like an old guy bartender. Like this is an old dive bar, and he's been bartending there for years. But I haven't drawn him yet, so if you come up with a good name, I'll change it around to fit the name. Hey, Kian's here again. Welcome back. It's like we're getting a whole usual suspects. The old crew is back. That makes me feel very good. How you been, Kian? Merrick Walsh. Merrick. Yeah, I. The only problem with Merrick, Nicholas, is that it's got to be. It's that's an unusual name, and basically, if he comes in, let me see what it looks like. Let me see what it looks like. Merrick. Uh, for a generic character that I'm very probably going to throw away, I need a little bit more vanilla ice cream name than that. Miguel. Let me think on that one. Kayan, we're trying to come up with a good name for an old guy bartender. Someone sent an email about a department potluck in White Elephant and accidentally CC'd 25,000 employees. Oh yeah. I should do a reply all one of these days. That wouldn't be a bad Evil Inc storyline. They accidentally CC'd 25,000 employees. Wow. It'd be cool if a bunch of them showed up, just for the joke of it. Have all of these people from across the Utah state bureaucracy just showing up with their dish to pass. By the way, I got Nicholas. I hope you're not. I hope you don't feel offended, but Phil is a definite old man. Phil is a definite old man name that's going to fit this bartender, I think. Nah, you're a good man, Nicholas. Do they do that joke in Great Britain where they say, "Ah, you're a good man," despite what everybody says about you, or is that just a United States hacky joke? Not that I'm above the hacky joke, but it is a hacky joke. Yeah, Phil, as in fill her up. Good name for a bartender. Ah, bar. Well, it's taken a long time for that guy to load or save. Time for Brad to get a new computer. Hard to find good life. Yeah, I know. I know. Life drawing is tough. And finding a good co-op or something is difficult. Colleges and art schools are pretty good bets, but it's not always easy to get into those. Never used the panel tool in Clip Studio. Yeah, the panel tool is really where Clip Studio kind of excels. Because then if you want to notch something in, like if you wanted to draw that panel up, you could take your cutting tool and do something like that, which I like doing in After Dark quite a bit to give myself a little bit more interesting page layout and do it in just seconds and have it be super uniform, super accurate. A great way to do it. Well, Stranger Things is getting a season 3, huh? I gotta tell you, I got watching that. I haven't made it past the first one. I think I may be the only person. I didn't think it was bad. I enjoyed it, but I got into those one of those kind of weird things where I just left off at a certain point and then just never really wanted to pick it back up again. Not through, like, again, I thought it was perfectly entertaining. It's just that the thought of starting it up again just doesn't really, I don't know. I feel bad because everybody's so nutso about it. Hey, Tyler. No, everybody was so nuts. I feel like an ingrate or something because everybody was nuts about it, and I, like I said, I didn't not like it, but I don't know. And my kids are the same way. They're like, oh no, you gotta watch it, and then there's season 2, and there's all this stuff, and I'm like, I'll get around to it. Sooner or later, I'll get around to it. Right now, yeah, I know, and I love that stuff. I love the '80s. I know it's a love letter to Spielberg, blah blah. I get it, and I appreciated it. I do not know what my block is. I have no idea why I can't get past it. You know what I'm watching right now? That I'm absolutely I don't I'm really I get really fascinated with this. They've on Netflix they've got all of those decade based documentaries, pseudo documentaries about the decades. They've got one for the '70s and one for the '80s and one for the '90s. Probably one for the 2000s if I look. Uh, I love that stuff. In terms of like a compelling, accurate look at history, it's kind of like, you know, breakfast cereal type stuff. You know, it's not like it's groundbreaking history or anything, but it's just, I don't know, very interesting. Especially when you go back like to the '70s when I was a kid and look at all this stuff like All in the Family and the music and Motown and all this stuff. If it's not that, oh God, my guilty pleasure. Those 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 documentaries on Netflix where that like there was a murder and they've got 100 hours of documentary where it's kind of like these guys got carted away to jail and they're rotting in jail for decades on end, and the documentary makes a very compelling case that they just didn't do it. And I'm suckered in by that stuff all the time. Making a Murderer and the staircase. Oh, the staircase. Holy cats. Spaced. I'm trying to remember what Spaced was. Is that like it? I'm I'm pulling up a vague image of what Spaced is. Watching YouTube slash your screen. I think the only thing on my screen should be Clip Studio. If not, I'm doing something wrong, which, given my track record today, wouldn't be hard. We recorded Comic Lab earlier today. You folks won't hear it for another, oh gosh, I think a good 2 weeks. We've got a good 2-week, maybe 3-week buffer. So you won't hear it for a little while. But we had Kevin McShane on. Kevin has deep roots in webcomics, and his day job is with BuzzFeed. So he takes us aside and really drills deep on that whole idea of the sharing statement. Now, he's got experience making content go viral on a regular basis on BuzzFeed, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that sharing statement. We do that. We deal with that stuff all the time, and here's what you need to know." And really, really kind of good, actionable stuff. As you can tell, that's our word. We started talking about actionable items at Patricon, and it's our new buzzword style obsession. Like to be actionable. Oh, God, I love British. I'm catching up with your chats, you guys. I love British comedies. Holy cats! There's something about that sense of humor, the dry sense of humor, that I really like. I can sit and watch BBC comedies ad nauseum. Smash, my youngest son, or my younger son, there's just two of them. My younger son is already, I think, halfway through the game. He got it Saturday. He's been playing way too much of it, more than any good parent would be allowing him to play. And he's going to be 13 in a few weeks here, and he's at that age. If any of you have teenagers, or if you remember when you were a teenager, he's at that age where it's really hard to wake up. It's really hard. Remember when you were a teenager? You could sleep an entire day away and, just not feel a thing the next morning. It's like, yeah, I slept, big deal. And, it's hard to get him up for school. Whereas he was always kind of the early riser, compared to his brother, who went through the same thing as he got into his teen years, and is kind of coming out of it now, which is interesting. But he was awake on time yesterday for the first time in weeks during the school year, during a school day, particularly. Yeah, he was awake on time for the first time in weeks, because he wanted to play Super Smash Brothers. Or as they call it, they insist on calling it Super Smash Bros. And I've explained to them that it's BROS, but that's the abbreviation for brothers, and really the name of the game is Super Smash Brothers. And they like saying Super Smash Bros. So he was up playing his Super Smash Bros. It was the first time we got to school without a big fight. You gotta wake up. First time we've done that in a long time. And then this morning, right back to sleep. Since I'm not taking the kids, Alex graduated from his middle school, and they'd gone to the same school, which was quite a distance from our house. It was a good, well, no, I know exactly, because my studio is still here, because that's where I chose my studio. So it's a good 20 to 30 minute drive, depending on traffic. And Now my older son is in high school, and it's the high school is a mile and a half away. He can walk it or take public transportation. And the younger one wasn't thrilled at what was going on in middle school. And there was another middle school that we could easily transfer him to that was offering so much more that he really liked, like hard sciences, math, and engineering. And that's a mile and a half away the other direction. So the upshot is I'm able to take I take the younger one to school just to make sure he gets there on time. The older one is on his own. But the younger one I take him to school, and then he gets himself home. And means I don't have to stop working here. And it also means that I can drive my wife into work. So she doesn't have to take the bus, which, particularly in the winter, she really likes. But what that means is I get back home from taking her to work, and I walk in the door, and my older son is getting ready to leave, and it's the same thing every day. Did your little brother wake up yet? No, I think he's still upstairs. I've got to go up, wake him up. He's always amazed at what time it is. What time is it? Oh! He's got an alarm clock, got a phone with an alarm, but he's going to be 13, man. That is a tough, tough age, especially for mornings. What is Comic Lab's website? I went looking for it and couldn't find it. Well, crying out loud. We actually changed it. So there's a couple of them, but we're changing over to a new host. So you can go to comiclab.simplecast.fm. That's going to be the new place. And of course, you can get all of the Comic Lab shows and stuff at patreon.com/comiclab. Bookmarked as well it should be. Watch get the radio show Cabin Pressure. I will check it out. Does that stop being hard to wake up? My older son has grown out of it a little bit, so I'd say it gets easier. Then you get to be an old guy like me, and it gets harder again. Either that, or you wake up in the middle of the night to go pee, and then you're like, oh, well, now I'm awake. Sit there scrolling through Twitter, waiting for something to bore you back to sleep. Have you guys touched on YouTube much? I can't remember. No, Tyler. If you've got some thoughts on YouTube, we have done precious little on YouTube, to be honest with you. Precious little. And in fact, we've got the damnedest problems with YouTube because that intro song that we use is from a friend of Dave's, and he gave us the rights to use it. We've got rights, but somehow he's got his music registered by like the ASPCA or something, and he either doesn't know how to, or he can't, or Dave doesn't want to bother him. I don't know what the issue is, but every time we put our show up on YouTube, it flags it for using copyrighted content. And they have a place that you can dispute it. And I always write a polite little note. No, we've got the right to use this, and blah, 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 and go through all the names I've got to drop and so forth. And they're like, well, yeah, we kind of don't believe you. And so knowing that, Tyler, I'm at Patricon, and you can sit down with a data analyst and go through some of the data specifically for your Patreon, and they'll tell you what they think you're doing right, what they think you're doing wrong, and blah, blah. And they didn't tell me too much that I didn't know about my own Patreon campaign. They were like, oh, yeah, you got a lot of $10 backers. I'm like, yeah, funny how that works. And they said, well, one thing you're really doing right is YouTube. And I go, that can't be the case. And she goes, why not? I said, because I'm not doing anything on YouTube. I'm not doing any outreach at all on YouTube. And she says, it's your top referral to Patreon. And I'm like, you're a kid. And she showed me, and it's like, yeah, I get a lot of referrals from YouTube. And other than what we're doing right now, these live draws, which I don't think I was doing a whole lot of at the time. I think one of the reasons I'm doing these live draws is because I got kind of fired up to do them at Patricon. So I don't think it was that, but yeah, I was flummoxed. So I've actually reached out to a voice actor I know, and I'm thinking about seeing if I can afford to put together just a real simple motion comic. Just get some actors to basically do a table read of the first chapter of Evil Inc. And the video would just be panel by panel of the comic. No real animation per se. Just to see what would happen if I put it out on YouTube and see if it would be beneficial. But Tyler, if you've got information on YouTube, that is one of the many areas that we are sadly deficient. Yeah, yeah. Well, we always talk about how YouTubers got it made, except that of course they don't. Right? We take a look at somebody who's got a million views on a video, and we're like, oh my god, what I wouldn't give for a million views on something that I put out, and that's true. But what does that yield? What does that give them? That's a question I put to Kevin McShane just a couple hours ago when we were recording Comic Lab. He was talking about getting a million views on something. I'm like, that's great. What did that yield? What did it give you? Did you get Patreon backers out of it? Were you able to point them to a store? Were tell me what the upshot of that is, so I can so I can get my mind around it. Otherwise, it's kind of fake internet points. It's like, oh yeah, it feels really good to get a million views. I would assume. I have never gotten anywhere as close. It feels really good to get a million views. But just like that guy we talked about on the show, he had 1.1 million viewers, 300 Patreon backers. It's like, man, there's something missing from that. And some of it, as I'm giving away the show. As we mentioned today, some of it is like when it comes to Instagram, I'm really, and I use this word not with like to put myself down. It's just the accurate word. I'm really ignorant. In other words, there's a bunch of stuff that I'm not knowledgeable, and I'm okay with that because I like learning about that guy. I don't mind uh, my ignorance pointed out. And there's been some people on Instagram that have very kindly pulled me aside in like a direct message and say, okay, let me explain to you a few things that you're missing here. And I talked to one guy that showed me, okay, yeah, Patreon wasn't his thing. It wasn't his forte, but he was able to launch a new book. And when he did that, he was able to directly point to Instagram being a major engine for the book sales. And I'm like, okay, now see that I can get my head around. That I get. Which is why if you follow me on Instagram, or if you've noticed, which is why again, it's some of this stuff I just do just because I want to prove it to myself. I want to experiment and see what happens. But I've been doing an experiment for the last couple of weeks now where I'm using his advice where he said, you got to post every day, you got to engage, you got to respond, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff that I kind of knew, but I needed to have it pointed out too. And he was like, yeah, you got to, and then you build it. Although, man, oh man, it's a slow build. I've been at 985 for a month. And Twitter's analytics keep telling me I'm up 10, I'm up 11 over last week, but I keep gaining and losing the same readers. I guess that I'm still knocking on the door of 1,000. Still at 985, I think. And just never, it's like Sisyphus, never getting closer. Now, what this guy told me was that once you get to a certain point, then you start gaining followers. There's just the numbers start to play with play to your favor. In other words, you've got so many that you're just gaining followers because you've got a lot of followers. So that's why I'm doing a lot of stuff on Instagram, like posting videos where I talk about like tips and posting things from the Webcomics Handbook and, of course, my comic and stuff like that. But, oof, is it ever slow? And the funny thing is, I'll be the first to tell on myself and laugh at myself. when I'm talking to these people about Instagram, you got to realize I've spent what 20, almost 20 years. I've been rounding it up, but technically it's easy because I started in 2000. So going on 19 years in webcomics, and wrote a couple books. You know, not it's not a brag. I'm just setting up what I'm going to say here. So I do a lot of instruction. I do webcomics.com. I've written a couple books. I do instruction at the college level. I do a lot of stuff, right? And that stuff puts me in the path of a lot of people who have questions about webcomics. And they always, a lot of times, they say a lot of the same stuff, like, you know, how do I get more readers? How do I push through? How many T-shirts should I print? You know, that kind of stuff. And I'm always kind of giving them the same advice, which is like, listen, buddy, this is a slow build, and you can't expect success overnight. And you know, I know it looks different, but I did this every day of the week for several years before I could even throttle down to 5 days a week. And that was before I could throttle down to what I'm doing now, which looks like less, but it's actually more, a higher page count. And you know, you can't rush it, and you got to build that audience person by person, member by member. You just can't expect more from yourself than is there. You know, you gotta build it slow, and you know, all this stuff that, you know, when I talk to younger people at comic conventions, you can see on their face they do not want to hear what you're saying, you know, because let's face it, that's no fun. I think, you know, I'd rather, I'm sure they would rather me give them the magic hashtag like we talked about, right? So I told you that so I could tell you this. I get this guy who finally takes me, and truthfully, there's been a couple. There was Anthony Wheeler over on Instagram. Chris Halbach has taken some time generously with me, and both of them are creators who I can really respect. I can take a look at what they're saying and really I get it. And so I start talking to these guys, and I'm like, you know, come on. This Instagram, it's flummoxing me. How could I possibly have under 1,000 Instagram followers? I'm better than, doesn't Instagram know who I am, right? And they're like, oh, Brad, geez, you've only been doing this for a little bit, and it's a slow build, dude, and you can't expect more. And they start telling me all this shit that I'm telling to people all the time, but instead of web comics, we're talking Instagram, but the same principles apply. And now I'm on the other side of the fence, and I'm the one looking for the magic hashtag. I'm the one looking for the shortcut, and I'll freely admit that. And I got one thing to say. All those people who thought I was a douchebag at comic conventions for saying all this stuff, they're not right, but I see their point. You know, I get it. Hey, Tate, welcome. And hello, King Kong. How you doing? Oh, my goodness. You guys are having we're having a whole conversation up here that I missed. Cringe, mortals. at one point you were looking at using some of us to do a verbal variant of Evil Inc. Yeah, that's still on the table. That's still on the table, Nicholas. I'm still thinking about it. And I would do it the same way we do the podcast using Zencaster. Basically, you get everybody recording. It records. You're recording together. You can hear each other, but your computer records on your desktop, and then it uploads all the MP3s and syncs them, which is really kind of amazing. So it's not off the books yet. It's still a possibility. Yep. Younger son just came home. He texts me when he comes home. Shuckaroonies. I'm wondering if you even need motion. Yeah. No, well, no, Tyler, motion in terms of like just panel to panel, not even motion. The only motion is going across the page and focusing in on the panel. Comic dubs. Yeah, that's a great name for it. It's a great name for it. If you would mind opening the door, we hate breaking the doors down. No, you're right. What I've got to do is I've got some voice actors. We're going back to the motion comic thing for YouTube, or quote unquote, the comic dub. I'm going to steal that. I've got some voice actors. The only question is, frankly, am I going to be able to afford them? And if not, do I want to try to do something with amateurs? Not that I'm against it, but I just almost wonder if it's going to be more trouble than it's worth. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And the other thing is, it's got to be right now. It's got to be a low priority because I've got a lot of things that especially this month and next month, have got to take priority. Mainly Kickstarter and Patreon have got to be priorities for me. Could you do the Big Bird one? Grab hold of the door and kick down the door. Starting to get a small viewership on line webtoons. Yeah. Listen, I'm bullish on online webtoons. I'm posting there for a reason. I think there's an upshot. I think there's a good reason to post online webtoons. They've got a readership that is plugged right in. You've got a built-in audience if you've got the right sort of stuff. And I don't think my stuff is the exact right sort of stuff, but if you've got especially manga, obviously is working well over there. But also having that thumb scroller view where you're setting up your comic to be read panel by panel in a vertical scroll, I think is pretty powerful. Because right now, one of the things traditionally that webcomics have not done very well is reach out to that audience that exists for whom their phones are their primary computer, or for whom their phones are how they're accessing the web most of the time. We're definitely pulling away from a desktop society. And I think webcomics are going to have to address that sooner or later. And we haven't really been doing a great job of it. And we see our audience receding as a result. We're not going out and chasing them where they are. we expect them to still come to our sites. Take a look at 90% of the people doing webcomics publishing right now, and I know you've heard me say this before, but they're publishing as if it's still 2005. They're publishing as if they're still trying to send traffic to their website. They're not keeping up. So I like line webtoons a lot. Oh no, Kickstarter. The books were delayed for my last Kickstarter, so a lot of those went out, and now it's a question of getting the artist editions, the commissions, all of that stuff. The people with larger orders that had multiple books. It's just a question of getting all of that done, and then for sure there is going to be a Kickstarter in the first part of next year. I've got to jump right on. For the last 2 years running, I was bound and determined that I was going to do 3 books. And for the last 2 years running, I completely boffed it. And I am hell bent, even if it means bringing in an assistant here. I've got an intern coming in starting in January from University of the Arts, where I'm teaching now. I've got an intern coming in. She's going to help compile all of the raw material for the second edition of the Webcomics Handbook. And that's going to be definitely on the slate. The next Evil Inc After Dark book is definitely got to happen. And that's probably going to be the first one of the year. So yeah, without a doubt, I am hell bent on doing at least 2, if not 3 Kickstarters, because I gotta get better about publishing. But first, that means I got to clear this Kickstarter out, and the fact that it took longer to print than I had planned on doesn't help. But so far, I've kind of been very lucky with good backers, and everybody kind of gets it. They understand. But that thing about that is you don't want to play games with people like that for too long. you don't realize what a good thing is until you ruined it. So it's something I take really super seriously. So I'll get the Kickstarter out. I'm gonna end Patreon on a high. I'm not gonna end Patreon. I'm gonna bring this month to a close on a high note for my Patreon backers. So we can go into 2019 with a full head of steam. I've had a record on Patreon of posting at least 1 exclusive post a day for every day of the year on Patreon. And these last couple of months, between the Kickstarter and a bunch of other stuff, and going to PatreCon was fun, but took a bunch of days out of my work schedule. I had a friend, Scott Kurtz, come in from out of town for PAX Unplugged. Great fun, but it took a lot of days out of my schedule. So it's been tough to keep up with all that. And I am bound and determined that I'm going to end this month on a high note for my Patreon backers, deliver to them to the same degree I've been delivering for 3 years, and then, like I said, hit the ground running for 2019. But that means that although this comic dub, motion comic, whatever you want to call it, is a neat idea, it's got to take a lower priority than the other stuff. And that's the other thing. I've got an intern coming in. And the other thing I learned at PatriCon is that I'm really in the zone now where I've got to think about bringing an assistant in, like an actual assistant, even if it's somebody just to do social media or to do some real simple things involving the site. And that's the other thing that we're going to be looking at in 2019, which terrifies me. But change is good. Actually, it doesn't terrify me. It's more like this. I am an old grump. Not that old, but, you know, I'm a grump. Hardly a young grump, but I'm a grump. And just having somebody in my space, having somebody in my studio, bleh. I'm going to have an intern in here 6 hours every Wednesday. That's enough for me to try to get my head around. Yeah, does that look like an oil funnel? An oil funnel look like? More oil funnel. Am I missing a little loop? That's pretty much it. Oh, some of them have a little handle deal. Maybe that's what I'm missing. Yeah. Why do I want to put a loop there? Okay, I see. There's a few of them. Yeah, all right. The Tin Woodsman, he had a motor oil can that looked like that, didn't he? Tin Woodsman oil can. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, his oil can looked completely different. What am I? Oh, the thing on his head. Yeah, that had the loop. I was right. I'm sorry, I'm having a whole conversation with myself over here. Scott McCloud is jumping up on his desk screaming, I was right about Infinite Canvas. You know, he yes and no. Man, see, here's the deal. Infinite Canvas, maybe. I don't know why I don't want to let that Infinite Canvas thing go. Thing about it is Infinite Canvas is great, except you still got to plan for the book. You can't get so infinite canvas that you can't put a book out, because that's where the money is. The money's in the book. The money's not in the infinite canvas. The audience building might be in the infinite canvas. Why can't I speak? Oh, God, you should have heard me at Comic Lab today. I was the worst. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, Scott McCloud. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just not willing to give that up yet. But the money is in the book. And that's where that infinite canvas thing can kind of get you into trouble. All I know is I have received mine a while ago and added it to my collection. Good for you, Nicholas. Intern victim. Oh, did you guys lose sound? I'm over here talking my ass off. No, you're responding stuff that I just said, so you must not have lost sound. King Kong, that might be a problem on your end. I would check your computer because I think people can still hear me. Could you elaborate? Oh, hi, Rob. How you doing? Could you elaborate on what your view was on the whole subscribe? No, good enough. The modern ones are a bit longer. I feel you. I don't like having anyone in my work area, especially when I'm working. Yeah, me either. I'm territorial. This is my space. I'm like a caveman. Rob, Subscribe Star, I'm going to be honest with you. Somebody suggested I check it out. I gave it a glance. I haven't given it much more than that. But since it's such a big part of my business is on Patreon, it would take an awful lot for me to move away from Patreon. And it would have to be really good to get me to split my time, filling another bucket. So the Subscribe Star thing, I don't have many views other than that. I looked at it, I glanced at it. I haven't given it a lot of thought, although in my opinion, they've got big shoes to fill when it comes to Patreon because I'm a big Patreon guy. I like it. No, not end Patreon. Welcome back, King Kong. No, not. I was talking about ending the year for Patreon on a good note. Not ending Patreon. I'm not ending Patreon. Oh God, how did you lose all your backers, Brad? Well, I got talking about ending Patreon in a good year, and the microphone cut out, and all I said was I was ending Patreon. No, please. Patreon will end me long before I end Patreon. And I've been enjoying the live cast while roughing this episode. Yeah, I'm this may be the most most vociferous group we've had for a live draw. This is great. That's right, to talk to people like you. Parts of it sounded almost like, oh, I don't know. Like I said, Rob, you're like a dog with a bone. You seem to really want to talk about this, but I don't know anything about it. I glanced at it at best. Oh, what did I write down? So the whole gag here is to have 2 or 3 superpowered people / creatures drinking at a bar in unusual ways. The obvious one being like the Robot Man generic drinking oil. But now I got to come up with a few more weird ways of drinking. I'm thinking a bird drinking out of a flower. Oh, better yet. Uh, butterfly, like an insect. Or visual anyway. Elephant drinking with his trunk, maybe. That funnel needs to move up a bit, or he's not going to get that spout in anywhere. Ah! Tyler, you're right. Tyler, are you an engineer? Holy cats. You're right. Tyler's a visual thinker, you can tell. I like drawing people drinking at a bar. They always got that hunched shoulders. They're always kind of leaning over on the bar, like they've got a little secret in front of them. If I'm not careful, this is going to look an awful lot like Arthur from The Tick. I don't want that. Man, am I liking this rewrite though. This episode, I am getting to actually have my doctor on screen, and I get to show why they're paranoid. It was just a story element in my head the first go around. I never went into why she didn't trust Alien Clark. Because man, the next focus for Evil Inc After Dark can always hit the G spot. Hey Rob, thanks for stopping by. Kay, and don't tempt me. I've done weirder stuff. The problem is, if I've got him hunched over, I don't have enough vertical space. It'd be funnier if you're leaning over drinking someone else's drink. Tyler, you may be right. I'm not. Well, this butterfly guy may be more trouble than it's worth. More commission fodder. Well, I didn't get as nearly as far as I was hoping to. I'm afraid it's 5:30 and I need to start pulling up stakes and getting home for dinner. Got a feeling I'm going to have a late night in front of me tonight. All right, my friends, I'm afraid that brings me to an end. I got to go home. I don't want to, but I got to. So thank you very much for hanging out. I may end up doing another one of these tomorrow. I'm I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to get some stuff done. All right, folks. Thanks again.